Have you ever heard about alchemy? And at times I believe that when you hear about alchemy, if a literary guru, then what comes into your mind very fast is magic realism. But before I discuss this book, then it's important that I differentiate the two aspects of literature. Now, when you look at alchemy, alchemy is the simplest way to look at it is that you invite the thinking about chemistry, and you talk about chemistry as a discipline, then you imagine about changing or transforming a substance, and that is exactly what alchemy is all about. But it does not look into converting or transforming subjects, in this case, or substances, but we are looking at how we are able to transform a human being from one stage to the next stage. And when it's doing that, yes, it employs some bit of fantasy, just like magic realism, but what it does eventually or strongly is to bring the definition of the very existence of a person through emotions. And interesting is that it has also to look through the existence of a person in a spiritual world, the existence of a person through the mind, the existence of a person as a soul, and that is the essence of alchemy. And Paulo Coelho, who wrote this book 11 Minutes, is a Brazilian author who has, by the way, sold so many copies of his books, and many people will tell you that has sold over 225 million books worldwide, and therefore you can't miss reading some of his books. As there is the alchemy, and then there is also this book, the 11 Minutes. These are the books that I've interacted with as Mulunda Slingi, and I found it necessary that I'm able to highlight to you what entails alchemy in this book. Now, we bring to us, Paulo Coelho brings to us a prostitute by the name Maria. Maria is a protagonist in this novel, and this gentleman, Paulo Coelho, wants us to appreciate alchemy in the sense that he starts this novel by bringing the art of children, the art of storytelling to children, by introducing it using once upon a time. And the moment you imagine of once upon a time, or the moment you hear about it, you just know that this is a story about children. On the contrary, that is to introduce a fantastic element for you to understand, to have the urge to read the book to the end and see how alchemy manifests itself. So Maria, as our protagonist, and as I've told you, is a prostitute. As a young person, as a girl, Maria opts to say, I want to start venturing into understanding my very existence as a person, my very existence as a human being, my very definition of what I'm made of, or what is my destiny by the existence of a person as Maria. In this case, then Maria, as a young girl, falls in love with some young boy when they are still in school. But then she realizes along the way that even before she could, communicate or pass her idea of love to this young boy, the boy disappears. So in that, Maria is able to learn that there are things which you can admire, but at long last, you can lose them. But she doesn't stop there. She eventually gets a job and starts working in a shop. And while in that shop, after having lost a relationship which she had admired so much with that boy, Maria has lost the essence of engaging in another relationship. Although the owner of that shop wants to have her as his own love, Maria, on the contrary, is not interested. However, she opts to get out of that town, and she goes to the major town in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. And when she arrives in this town, Maria starts to be transformed. And that's the essence of alchemy. That here, as a young girl, eventually she's working in a shop, and now she's in a city that's in Rio de Janeiro, and she finds there some man from Switzerland, and this man, talks to her that, yes, I want you to go and be a dancer, samba dancer in my country, in my enterprise. Maria never expected, of course, that she's going to be to engage in that kind of business, but she accepts the offer and she leaves the country together with this man from Switzerland. Arriving in Switzerland, she's uncomfortable with the kind of job that she does. Of course, she has to engage in prostitution. She has to sell her body for her to earn an income. But then she's finding it so difficult to work with this manager, because the manager seems to have also other interests with her, and she opts out of that particular enterprise, particular business, particular employment, and she invites the lawyer. You know, she has to invoke also the thinking that yes, there are lawyers in this world and they can fight for my rights, and eventually she's paid properly and she leaves that kind of business. But then she goes ahead to be employed in a Copacabana. This one is another brothel. It's a big brothel that has international people coming in for the celebration of their lives. And Maria describes these men as rich, but although they are rich, they have a problem. Their souls are empty. These are men who are looking somewhere and someplace and somebody who can comfort them. And she decides that I want to be the best prostitute of myself. I want to offer the best to these men. And she does not therefore do that only sexually, but she's able also to access the souls of these men. And in doing so, she's able to understand their weaknesses, and she learns that yes, these men have enough in their lives, but they lack one thing. Their minds are not okay, their souls are empty. And how am I supposed to do it? As a professional prostitute, then I'm supposed to offer guidance to seek the inner existence of these men and help them reestablish their happiness, help them to be the new men that they're supposed to be the very men that they're supposed to be in their lives. And one of such men is Ralph. You know, Ralph is an artist. He's able, you know, he paints people, he paints everything to the international standards, and he's recognized internationally. But then Ralph also has a challenge. He has no wife. He explains to Maria. Maria is able to dig into his life and is able to open up to himself that yes, I had the love, but things went south because of A, B, C, D. In so doing, Maria manages, you know, to be a panacea to his emotional breakdowns. And he eventually tells Maria that he never expected that a prostitute or prostitute of that nature could be able to turn his life around. He appreciates that this prostitution that Maria is carrying around, that Maria is practicing, is so powerful that she was able to change him, to restore his feelings. And to demonstrate that Maria imagines that prostitution, just like any other job, it involves two things. One, wasting someone's time. That any moment you're engaging in anything just because of money, then you're also engaging in prostitution. But she helps us to understand also some types of prostitution. How she puts to us that there are a number of prostitutions that is exercised by people. One of it is that there are those ones who exercise the street prostitution. Street, such that they stand on the road and they wait for men to come and pick them and pay and do whatever they are supposed to do and live. And then there is another stage of prostitution whereby they are very classy, they are international, they walk around with business people, just like now Maria. That in her standard, she appears, some people can even confuse her to be an international businesswoman, because she has to walk around with the rich business people, making them happy, touching their souls, changing their lives. But in so doing, she makes these people happy, but at the same time, she gets her payment. But I want to help you understand that Maria is a very focused prostitute. That even when she's engaging in prostitution in Switzerland, she's focused that at the end of it, she wants to see spiritual purification in her life. She wants to see the attainment of a very important goal, that's buying a farm in her homeland. And that means that she's very keen again to ensure that after all these things that she's engaging in, she's able to go back to her homeland. And that is exactly what Paulo Coelho wants us to see as alchemy. He wants us to imagine that, you know, the transformation of this prostitute from a young girl who purposed to be in love, and a young girl who is disappointed by the same love, a young girl who is engaging in some painful sort of love, eventually accepts that God is the ultimate source of happiness. And we see Maria finally going into a church, repenting and praying for her life. That is the spiritual purification of Maria. And Ralph equally, because of Maria, is able to go to church and also seek spiritual purification. That is the aspect of alchemy that the writer Paulo Coelho wants you to appreciate, that the existence of man is not only in mind, is not only physical, but lies deeply into their souls, and that it's important for men to appreciate their souls. It's important for men to always seek the purification of their souls, because when that is tempered, man is likely to live as unhappy species, as unhappy individual, as unhappy father, as unhappy husband. Yet the existence of man is at all times to see to it that they are happy. Another thing that Maria reminds us is that in all this search of the meaning of her life and the meaning of other people's lives, as the way she's able to help them to find meaning in their lives, Maria brings to us something some many of us might have never thought about: masochism. That in discovering about love, she finds some man, a very international, a diplomat in this case from UK, and this diplomat pays her handsomely, but is not interested in aspect of having that sex, but is interested in suffering. Suffering in this case, that, you know, he asks Maria that I'm going to beat you. And indeed he beats Maria to the extreme end, that Maria thinks that she might die because of that beating. But this man enjoys the beating of a woman. He celebrates the beating of this lady. But in so doing, Maria discovers that it's actually the emptiness of the soul of this man, that when he's beating someone, that is when he gains happiness. On the other hand, Maria becomes so happy after discovering that when you are pushed to the end of your limit as a person, then you become innovative. Then you start to appreciate the feelings that you have that comes with the pain, and that these feelings of pain can remind you about love, and that there are things in life that can come through suffering. There are things in life that can come through punishment. There are things in life that indeed can. And Maria says that love is a thing that can make someone to suffer, is source of suffering. And if you ask yourself this question, have you ever suffered because of love? Of course, the answer will be yes. Have you ever suffered because of a relationship? The answer will be yes. And that is what Maria brings to us. But as I've said, the ultimate of it all is that you must seek purification. You must seek the goals that you desire in your life, such that Maria, at the end of it, as a prostitute, is able to go back to her land, to her homeland in Brazil, and accomplishes her dream by purchasing a land for their family. Yes, that is the essence of this book, and I recommend for you to read the 11 minutes. But then you might ask me about the title. What does it mean? It carries a lot of symbolism, in the sense that actually of all the things that men engage in with women, they talk about love, but at the end of it, they'll use 11 minutes to have sex. That most men who are good in bed, they can actually use 11 minutes for sex purpose. Thank you.